Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to be unpacking a very specific faith-based framework for finding happiness in modern romantic relationships. Whether you're just navigating the early awkward stages of a crush or you're dealing with some really deep marital conflicts, exploring different philosophies on love can honestly be incredibly eye-opening. Okay, let's just jump right in and anchor ourselves in today's source text. We are looking at Ryuho Okawa's book, How to Grasp Happiness. We're going to focus specifically on Chapter 1, which offers recommendations for what the author calls a flexible and intellectual romance. It's basically a framework that directly links the spiritual realm to everyday earthly dating. But right off the bat, you've kind of got to wonder, how exactly does an author bridge the gap between everyday dating dilemmas and, well, divine intervention? Like, how can a spiritual belief system actually influence your earthly romantic success? That is the core question this book attempts to answer, framing romance not just as a social thing we do, but as a deeply spiritual journey. So, to understand this unique blend of advice, here's our roadmap. We'll look at guardian spirits and ideal love, honest communication, understanding infidelity, the problem with cohabitation, and finally, stepping away from affairs. All right, part 1, guardian spirits and ideal love. The initial search for a partner. So, according to the text, finding that ideal man isn't just about endlessly swiping on dating apps or, going to the right parties. It actually relies heavily on the spiritual mechanics of your guardian spirit. The author defines this as an unseen spiritual entity attached to every single individual. The idea here is that instead of just looking for a partner yourself, your guardian spirit can basically communicate with the guardian spirit of your ideal match. Completely behind the scenes. It's like a cosmic matchmaker. To leverage those unseen spiritual forces, the author lays out a very specific 3-step process. First, you've got to cultivate a strong believing heart. Second, actively pray to your guardian spirit every single day. And third, by doing this, the text says you will receive the divinely orchestrated chance to meet your ideal match. So it essentially turns the passive hope of finding love into this highly active, daily spiritual practice. Moving right along to part 2, honest communication in romance, overcoming those initial relationship hurdles. We've all been there, right? You like someone, but you end up saying the exact opposite of how you actually feel. Well, the text diagnoses this inability to be honest as a habit of self-defense. You're basically trying to protect yourself. The spiritual solution here requires a much more intellectual approach to romance. You have to put in the effort to recognize and actively control your emotional fluctuations. You really have to drop that defense mechanism so your words actually align with your true heart. Okay, part 3, understanding infidelity and trust, navigating relationship crises. Now, this is a pretty traditional perspective. The author uses the concept of a male hunting instinct to explain why men might stray or lose interest over time. The text explicitly states, and I quote, "Men have a hunting instinct, and the reality is they prefer to chase rather than be chased." This foundational assumption is absolutely crucial because it heavily dictates the advice the book gives to women on how to manage marital crises. So instead of modern interventions you might expect today, like couples therapy or an immediate separation, the text suggests that a wife's overt suspicion can sometimes actually trigger a man's infidelity. Because of that, the book mandates cultivating long-term tolerance and choosing to trust your husband in the grand scheme of things. The advice is literally to treat the crisis like you're weathering a passing storm. You endure the rough weather with the belief that it will eventually blow over if you just remain steadfast. Next up, part 4. The problem with cohabitation, the spiritual view on living together. In this particular framework, living together prior to tying the knot, it's basically seen as lacking divine favor. The author posits that true responsibility for another person, and really for the relationship itself, is only taken through the formal, spiritual, and social container of marriage. Anything less than that is viewed by the author as an evasion of true commitment. And finally, part 5, stepping away from affairs, resolving toxic triangles. If you find yourself stuck in a doomed romance, like, say, an affair with a married superior at work, the text offers a very decisive exit strategy. It says one must have the grace to draw a conclusion quickly and step away to avoid making one's future unhappy. The author advises trusting the flow of destiny here. You have to believe that closing one toxic door gracefully is exactly what allows the divine to open another one for you. Lingering in a harmful love triangle is only going to compromise your own long-term spiritual and earthly happiness. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to chew on. In an age of incredibly complex modern dating, how does understanding traditional and faith-based relationship frameworks alter your perspective on romance? Whether these strict spiritual mandates really resonate with you, or maybe you prefer much more contemporary approaches, taking a look at these different philosophies definitely helps us understand the wildly diverse ways humanity seeks out love, connection, and ultimately happiness. Thanks so much for joining me for this breakdown, and I really hope it gave you something fascinating to think about.